My father retired after 31 years with the same construction company, and my mother threw him a party that 43 people attended. I know the exact number because I counted them from the back of the room, standing near the folding table with the coffee urns, holding a plate of food I never touched. My mother gave a speech that night, 8 minutes long. She talked about my father's career, his dedication, his sacrifice. She talked about my brother Elliot and how proud he was of Dad. She talked about my sister-in-law Renee's pasta salad, which apparently took 3 hours to make. She talked about the grandkids. She talked about the neighbors who'd sent flowers. She did not say my name once, not once in 8 minutes. And the reason that matters, the reason I'm still thinking about it 4 years later, is that 6 months before that party, I had quit my job, moved back into my childhood home, and spent 173 days taking care of my father while he recovered from a double bypass. 173 days. I counted those too. My name is Scott. I'm 41 years old. I work in logistics management for a regional freight company out of Columbus, Ohio. Or at least I did until I didn't anymore. My father, Gene Hartwell, 68, spent 31 years as a project superintendent for Meridian Construction, a mid-sized commercial builder that did mostly school renovations and county infrastructure work across central Ohio. He was good at his job, methodical, quiet. The kind of man who showed up 15 minutes early every single day and never once left before the work was done. My brother Elliot is 6 years older than me. He lives in Scottsdale now with Renee and their 2 kids. He sells medical devices, good money, company car, the whole package. He plays golf on Sundays. He texts our parents on their birthdays and calls on Christmas. I don't say that to be bitter. I'm trying to be accurate. Our mother, Darlene Hartwell, 66, is the kind of woman who has never once said the words, "I was wrong," in my presence, not to me, not to my father, not to anyone I've ever seen her interact with. She is not cruel in any obvious way. She doesn't yell. She doesn't throw things. She operates through silence and subtraction, the compliment that never comes, the acknowledgement that gets redirected, the moment that should be yours but somehow becomes someone else's before you understand what happened. Growing up, I understood without being told that Elliot was the one. He was taller, louder, more confident in the easy way some people just are. He made friends without effort. He got a baseball scholarship to Ohio State. My mother kept his framed team photo on the mantle from his junior year of high school until I checked this last Thanksgiving. It is still there. He's 47 years old and his high school baseball photo is still on the mantle. I was the younger one. Decent grades, no scholarship, studied business at Ohio University, on loans I finished paying off at 34. I never gave my mother anything dramatic to frame. I'm not telling you this to make you feel sorry for me. I'm telling you because you need to understand the weather in that house. The kind of thing you stop noticing after a while because it's always just been the temperature. My father's heart attack happened on a Tuesday afternoon in March. He was at a job site in Westerville, a middle school gym renovation, when he started feeling what he described later as something pressing on my chest from the inside, like a hand pushing outward. His foreman drove him to the ER. They kept him for 2 days, ran every test imaginable, and told him he needed a double bypass as soon as they could schedule it. I found out from my mother's text. It said, "Dad had a cardiac event. He's stable. Elliot knows." That's the full text. 6 words about my father. 3 words to confirm Elliot had been told first. I drove to Columbus that night. It's about an hour and 40 minutes from where I was living in Dayton. I got to the hospital around 9:30 and sat with my father until visiting hours ended. He looked smaller in that bed than I'd ever seen him look. My father is a broad man, wide shoulders, thick hands, the kind of build you get from actual physical labor over decades. In that hospital bed, under those lights, he looked like someone had quietly taken something out of him. My mother was there. She was polite to me. That's the word I keep landing on, polite. The way you're polite to someone you don't dislike but also don't particularly need. Elliot flew in from Scottsdale 2 days later for the surgery. He stayed 3 days. He brought Renee and the kids. It was, by all appearances, a full family response. My mother made his favorite, pot roast, the night before he flew back. I remember standing in the kitchen doorway watching her set the table with the good china and thinking, without any particular emotion, she's never made pot roast for me. Then Elliot flew home. My father's recovery after the bypass was supposed to take 8 to 12 weeks for basic function, and up to 6 months before he was anywhere close to his previous energy levels. The cardiologist, Patricia Nguyen at Ohio State Wexner Medical Center, was direct with us. He could not be alone during the first several weeks, could not drive, could not do stairs without supervision initially, needed help with medication management and follow-up appointments. He had 4 of them scheduled in the first 6 weeks alone. My mother worked part-time at a dental office, front desk, scheduling, 12 hours a week mostly. She had flexibility, but she also had her book club on Tuesdays, her water aerobics on Thursday mornings, her standing lunch with her friend Carolyn on the first Friday of every month. She had a life she had built carefully around the edges of my father's career, and the idea of setting it aside, even temporarily, even for this, seemed to register to her as an imposition. She called Elliot first. I found this out later from my father, not from her. Elliot said he couldn't take extended time away from work. His territory had just expanded. He had a quarterly review coming up. The kids had school. All of that was true. I'm not saying it wasn't true. Then she called me. She didn't ask. I want to be clear about that because I've thought about it many times since. She didn't say, "Scott, we need help. Would you be able to come?" What she said was, "Elliot can't get away right now, so I was hoping you might be able to step in for a little while. The way you'd ask someone to water your plants." I said yes. I don't want you to think I said yes out of some heroic impulse, or because I was trying to prove something. I said yes because he was my father and he just had open heart surgery and someone needed to be there, that's all. It was not complicated for me. I put in for a leave of absence at work. My manager, to his credit, was decent about it. Family medical leave, unpaid after the first 2 weeks under Ohio's leave statutes, but protected. I packed what I needed, put my apartment on a month-to-month extension, and moved into my old bedroom in my parents' house in Gahanna on a Saturday morning in late April. The room still had the same dark blue curtains from when I was 17. The first weeks were hard in a physical way I hadn't anticipated. My father was in real pain and worked hard to pretend he wasn't. He'd had his sternum cut open. His chest was held together with wire. The medication schedule alone, 7 different prescriptions, some with food, some without, some timed specifically around blood pressure windows, took me 2 evenings and a spreadsheet to fully organize. I color-coded it. I put it on the refrigerator and a copy in the bathroom and took a photo on my phone so I'd have it anywhere. I drove him to every appointment. I sat in every waiting room. I listened to every cardiologist explain every number, ejection fraction, resting heart rate, blood pressure targets, and I took notes on my phone so I could remember to ask the follow-up questions at the next visit. When his incision site got red and warm at the 3-week mark, I noticed before he mentioned it, and I called the surgeon's office at 7 in the morning because I'd read that infection was the #1 complication in that window. It was fine, minor inflammation. They adjusted 1 medication. My mother came home from the dental office, made dinner, and mostly moved around us like we were a piece of furniture she decided to leave in the living room for now. I'm not being cruel, that's just the honest account. There were moments, I want to be fair. There were moments where she sat with him in the evening while I went to the grocery store, and I'd come home and they'd both be watching something on TV, and it looked almost peaceful. There were mornings she made him oatmeal exactly the way he liked, brown sugar, not white, with the banana sliced thin. She knew how to love him in the small daily ways, I don't doubt that. But she never once said, "Scott, thank you for being here." Not in 173 days. The thing that happened with my job came at week 11. My manager called me on a Thursday to let me know that the company was reorganizing the logistics division. My position wasn't being eliminated exactly, but it was being restructured in a way that required a decision, return by a specific date or accept a severance package. The date was 3 weeks out. My father still couldn't drive. He had 2 more cardiology follow-ups scheduled. He'd had a setback at week 9, not cardiac, a respiratory infection that had scared everyone badly for about 72 hours, and his cardiologist had extended the supervised recovery window by another 4 weeks. I called my mother into the kitchen and explained the situation. She listened. Then she said, "Well, Elliot mentioned he might be able to come out for a week in June." June was 6 weeks away. I took the severance package. It was 4 weeks of pay. I had savings, not a lot, but enough to cover my apartment and basic expenses for a few months while I looked for something new. I filed for unemployment. I updated my resume on a Sunday night after my father was asleep, sitting at the kitchen table under the overhead light, and I remember looking up at the ceiling for a long moment before I went back to typing. I did not tell my father what had happened with my job for another 3 weeks. I didn't want him worrying. His cardiologist had been clear. Stress was a genuine medical concern during recovery. So I said nothing, made his oatmeal, drove him to his appointments, and sent out applications from my laptop at night. He found out anyway. He found the severance letter in the recycling bin. It was the only time in those 6 months that he cried in front of me. He was sitting at the kitchen table and I walked in from the garage and he had the paper in his hands and his face looked, I don't know how to describe it exactly, undone. Scott, he said, just my name. It's fine, Dad, I said. I've got leads. It's fine. He folded the letter very carefully and set it on the table and looked at it for a long time. Your mother doesn't know? He asked. No. He nodded slowly. He didn't say anything else. But something shifted in him that day. I felt it more than I saw it, like something that had been quiet for a long time had woken up and was now paying very close attention. The retirement party was in October. Meridian Construction threw a company party first, a lunch at a steak restaurant in Westerville, nice place, about 20 of his colleagues and the company owners, a plaque, some speeches. My father seemed genuinely moved by it. These were men he'd worked alongside for decades. They told stories about job sites and weather delays and the time a concrete delivery showed up 4 hours late on a school renovation that had a hard deadline. They laughed a lot. I sat 2 seats down from my father and watched him be seen by people who actually knew what he'd done, and it was the first time in months I felt anything close to uncomplicated happiness. Then there was my mother's party, the one she organized at the house the following Saturday. She had called Elliot to help plan it. This I know because Elliot called me, not to ask for help, but to let me know what was happening and to ask if I could handle the setup Saturday morning. I said yes. I drove to Gahanna Friday night, helped arrange the furniture, set up the borrowed folding tables, ran to the grocery store twice for things that had been forgotten. 43 people came. Neighbors, relatives, a few of my father's old colleagues who hadn't been at the work lunch. My Aunt Debbie, who I hadn't seen in 4 years. People I recognized from Christmas cards. It was loud and warm, and the house smelled like Renee's pasta salad and someone's perfume, and the October air coming in through the side door someone kept leaving open. Elliot worked the room. That's the only way to describe it. He moved from cluster to cluster with a drink in his hand and a story ready, and people lit up when he arrived in their orbit. That's a real skill. I mean that without sarcasm. He's good at that. I stayed near the coffee table and ate a chicken skewer and made small talk with my Uncle Roy, who is 73 and has opinions about the Cleveland Browns that could fill several volumes. Then my mother tapped her glass. She thanked everyone for coming. She talked about my father's career, the projects, the years, the dedication. She got a little emotional at one point and pressed her fingertips to her eyes, and people murmured warmly. Then she said she wanted to raise a glass to the person who had really helped keep things together during Jean's recovery. She looked directly at Elliot. To Elliot, she said, who dropped everything and flew out here, who kept us all calm, who made sure his father knew he wasn't alone. Elliot raised his glass. People raised their glasses. Someone said, "Here, here." Renee was beaming. I watched my father's face from across the room. His expression didn't change, not the way you'd expect. He didn't flinch or look away. He just went very still, the way still water goes still, and he watched my mother finish her toast, and then very deliberately, almost in slow motion, he set his glass down on the end table next to him without raising it. Nobody noticed. I noticed. I set my plate down. I wasn't planning to leave, exactly. I wasn't sure what I was planning, but I started moving toward the back hallway because I needed 30 seconds somewhere that wasn't that room. I was almost to the hallway when I felt a hand on my arm. It was my father. He had crossed the room without me seeing him move, and his grip on my forearm was firm. Not desperate, not dramatic, just firm. The grip of a man who has made a decision. He didn't say anything at first. He looked at me for a moment with that same very still expression, and then he reached into the inside pocket of his sport coat and pulled out an envelope. He held it out to me. "I've been carrying this for 3 weeks," he said, "waiting for the right time. I don't think I should wait anymore." I took the envelope. My name was written on the front in his handwriting, neat block letters, the way he'd always written, the way he labeled toolboxes and job site folders. "Open it later," he said. "Not here." Then he squeezed my arm once, released it, and walked back into the party like nothing had happened. I sat in my car in the driveway for 40 minutes before I opened it. Inside was a letter, 3 pages in his handwriting, and a separate document, 2 pages, official letterhead from Hartwell Family Trust, which I had not known existed until that moment. I read the letter first. He started by apologizing. Not in a vague, gestural way, in a specific, itemized way that told me he had been thinking about this for a long time. He apologized for the years he had watched the imbalance in our house and said nothing. He used the phrase, "I told myself it wasn't my place, and I was wrong." He said he had known, not suspected, known, that my mother had called Elliot first when he was in the hospital. He had been awake when she made the call. He said he had lain there listening and told himself it didn't mean anything. He wrote about the day he found the severance letter. He wrote that he had gone that same evening to his attorney, a man named Robert Stills, who had handled his estate planning for 15 years, and revised his will and the trust documents that had been sitting largely unchanged since 2009. The second document was a summary of the revised trust. My father owned the house outright. He also had a retirement account, a modest brokerage account, and a piece of land in Licking County, 12 acres outside Newark that his father had left him, undeveloped, that had been quietly appreciating for 30 years. He had also, I learned for the first time that night, been a part owner of a small equipment leasing company that a former colleague had started in 2014, a minority stake that had never amounted to much, but had recently become worth something when a larger company came looking to acquire them. The trust now designated me as the primary beneficiary, not equally split. Primary. Elliot would receive the brokerage account and a percentage of the retirement funds. He would not receive the house, the land, or the stake in the equipment company. There was a note at the bottom of the second page in my father's handwriting. This is not about punishing anyone. This is about accuracy. You were there. I know you were there. I sat in that car until the party ended, and people started leaving and the lights in the house went off one by one. I did not tell Elliot. My father told him, about 6 weeks later, in a phone call. I know this because Elliot called me right after, and it was the most uncomfortable conversation I've had with my brother in my adult life. He wasn't angry, exactly. That surprised me. He was quiet in a way Elliot is almost never quiet. He said Dad explained his reasoning. He paused for a long time. Then he said, I didn't know about your job, Scott. Mom didn't. I didn't know. Another pause. I should have called more. I didn't say yes, you should have. I didn't say anything for a moment. I know, I said finally. And then, I'm not trying to take anything from you. I know you're not, he said. We talked for another few minutes about nothing in particular, the awkward orbital conversation of two people finding new distance. He asked how the job search was going. I told him I'd gotten an offer from a company in Columbus the week before, regional operations coordinator, slightly better pay than what I'd left, good benefits, I took it. Good, he said. He sounded like he meant it. That's good. After I hung up, I sat for a while. I didn't feel triumphant. I want to be honest about that, because I think people expect these moments to feel triumphant, and this one didn't. It felt quiet. Like a room after the last person leaves and you're cleaning up, and the music is off, and it's just you in the space and the ordinary light coming through the window. My mother found out about the trust changes from my father directly. He told her on a Sunday afternoon about 2 months after the party. I was not there for it. I heard about it from my father, who called me that evening and said simply, I spoke with your mother today. I wanted you to know. I asked how it went. He was quiet for a moment. She's upset, he said. I think she expected me not to notice things I noticed. Then he said something I've thought about many times since. He said, I spent 30 years noticing things at work that needed to be fixed and finding ways to fix them. I don't know why I thought family was different. I didn't say anything. I'm sorry it took me so long, he said. I kept thinking there'd be a better moment. There isn't, is there? There's just the moment you're in. No, I said. There isn't. My parents did not separate over this. I want to be clear about that. They are still married, still living in the Gahana house, still watching television together in the evenings. My mother still makes his oatmeal with brown sugar and thinly sliced banana. Some things don't come apart cleanly. Some things just shift, settle into a new shape, and keep going. But something changed. My mother called me in November, the first time she had called me, not texted, in possibly years. She did not apologize in any direct way. That would have required saying she was wrong, and I told you who she is. But she said, I know the last year was hard on you. I want you to know I'm glad you were there for your father. It was quiet for a moment. He needed someone there, I said. Yes, she said, he did. That was all. It lasted maybe 4 minutes. It wasn't a reconciliation. It wasn't a transformation. It was just two people deciding, without saying so out loud, to take one step forward instead of staying still. I'll take it. My father turned 69 last spring. I drove to Gahana for his birthday dinner. Just family. My parents, Elliot and Renee, who flew in, the two kids who are getting tall in that alarming way children do when you don't see them often enough. We ate at the kitchen table with the leaf put in to make it bigger, and my mother made the pot roast. She made enough for everyone. After dinner, my father asked me to walk with him around the block. He does this now. Evening walks, doctor's orders, 20 minutes at a minimum. We walked slowly. He asked about the new job, about my apartment in Columbus I'd moved into in January, about a woman I'd been seeing for a few months, who I wasn't ready to say too much about yet. At the end of the street there's a streetlight that flickers, has flickered for years, probably needs a new bulb. Nobody's gotten around to it. We stopped under it for a moment and my father looked up at the neighborhood he'd lived in for 34 years. "You know what I think about sometimes?" he said. "What?" "That letter you never got at the party." I didn't say anything. "I should have stood up," he said, "right there in front of everyone. I had a glass in my hand. I should have stood up and said it." "You said it," I said. "In the car, in the envelope." He shook his head a little. "It's not the same, Dad." "I know," he said. "I know it doesn't change anything. I just want you to know I know." We stood there for another minute under that flickering light. The neighborhood was quiet, just wind, and the sound of a television from someone's open window, and my father breathing steadily beside me the way he gets to breathe now, because his heart is held together with wire and medication and 173 days that nobody toasted. Then we turned around and walked back to the house, where the light was on and the door was unlocked, and there was still half a pot roast on the stove.